The EU agrees on a 10th package of sanctions against Russia, coinciding with the one-year anniversary of the war in Ukraine.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky leads ceremonies in Kyiv marking 1 year of Russia's full-scale invasion.
Ukraine's athletes forced to flee and competing for more than just medals.
The EU has agreed a new round of sanctions against Russia, a decision deliberately timed to coincide with the one-year anniversary of the war in Ukraine. It's the 10th package since President Vladimir Putin launched his invasion and introduces an export ban on industrial goods worth 11 billion euros. The list includes electronic components, jet engines and antennas which Moscow will struggle to replace. For the first time, the EU is also extending the sanctions to entities linked to Iran's Revolutionary Guard, targeting those involved in the production of drones that the Kremlin is using in Ukraine. The blacklist has finally been expanded to include individuals and entities that are responsible for illegal deportations of Ukrainian children. The European Commission says that the pressure on Russia will continue.
Russia is falling backwards towards an autarkic economy, cut away from the world. Our sanctions are eroding sharply its economic base, slashing any prospect to modernize it. We will continue to put pressure on Russia and on those supporting it on the battlefield.
But the negotiations to reach the agreement on the 10th package of sanctions were not simple. Some countries, including Poland, wanted more. They were asking for Russia's nuclear sector to be included, as well as a ban on synthetic rubber that is used in tyre production. The importation of Russian diamonds is also not on the list, something Belgium is opposed to. On the opposite side, Hungary was fighting to exclude several Russian names from the blacklist, but ultimately failed.
A year on from Russia's invasion, Ukraine and its leadership are still standing. President Volodymyr Zelensky led the morning ceremony marking the outbreak of the war. Moscow's aim was to topple his government and conquer the nation within days. Zelensky said the Ukrainian people stopped that from happening.
Я дякую всім, хто витримав той лютий, цей рік, і хто дає Україні незламність. Слава усім, хто зараз в бою. Слава усім вам, хто допомагає щоденно битися і хто рятує життя.
On the streets of Kyiv, people reflected on a year of resistance, suffering and loss.
Для мене цей день розділив життя, як вже сказала, до і після. Я рік не була вдома, я рік не бачила свою родину, тому для мене це страшний біль.
І я вже сподіваюся, що слідуючої річниці в нас не буде. Я вірю в те, що в цьому році ми вже закінчимо війну.
As Ukraine enters a second year of war, people seem united and determined to fight on. But with both sides preparing for a new offensive, there's little hope of the conflict ending anytime soon.
Immigration for Action is one of thousands of Russian companies registered in Georgia after Russia's invasion of Ukraine. It helps Russians who fled mobilization find houses, adapt to their new environment and learn a new language.
Сам тоже хожу на курсы грузинского языка, которые мы недавно запустили, и вот сегодня у нас это супер пользуется популярностью. У нас оказались мы здесь, потому что в России началась война. Потому что, с одной стороны, не хочется жить в государстве, которое, там, я считаю, и наша команда считает, по сути дела, фашистским, которое напало на другую страну.
A year on from the invasion, there are new cafes and entertainment venues in Tbilisi with a mainly Russian clientele. And there are Russian bookstores too, such as Itaka Books.
Впервые я в Грузии побывал в 2017 году, то есть 5 лет назад. И Мне нравилось слово «Тбилиси». Я приехал в Тбилиси, 3 часа здесь погулял и понял, что я больше не люблю Москву. Я люблю Тбилиси. Я хочу жить в Тбилиси.
According to Transparency International, 15,000 new businesses have been registered in Georgia, leading experts to believe that the Russians who fled their country are planning to stay.
ასობით კომპანია ერთი და იგივე მისამართზე რეგისტრირებული, მათ შორის სოფლები არის, სადაც 300-400 რუსული კომპანია გაიხსნა რამოდენიმე თვეში. თითქოს ეს ფიქტიური მისამართები, რაც ფორმალურად ჭირდებათ რეგისტრაციის დროს. უნდათ რომ აქ დარჩნენ საცხოვრებლად და ამიტომ აქ თავიდანვე იჭერენ თადარიგს, რომ აქ იმუშაონ, ზოგ ბიზნეს კეთება უნდა, ზოგს არ ვიცი, სხვა რამ უნდა, მაგრამ ბინადრობის უფლების მიღების გასამარტივებლად თუნდაც რეგისტრირდებიან ირმეწარმეებად.
According to official data, about 1.5 million Russian citizens have crossed the Russia-Georgia border since the war started. How many have stayed is not known. The influx worries many in Georgia. A recent survey found 70% of Georgians thought the arrival of Russians would negatively impact the country, and they supported imposing a visa regime on their northern neighbour.
Different parts of the world are marking the first anniversary of the Russian invasion of Ukraine with vigils. People gathered at this one in London's Trafalgar Square to show their support for those still living in the war-torn country.
We speak to them, we ask about the situation in Ukraine, we support them, so they need emotional, psychological support, but also we learn from them how to be strong. They tell us, guys, we will win, so they tell us, don't worry, just help, give us help. As much as we can, as you can, and we will stay strong, we will win.
In Brussels, the Ukrainian flag colours lit up the buildings of the European institutions. In Paris, the Eiffel Tower also lit up in yellow and blue, as well as the Parliament building in Portugal. The support and solidarity on the first-year anniversary of the invasion also came from the other side of the Atlantic. In New York, dozens of people gathered in front of the Russian consulate to protest against the war.
A year ago, Putin started the war against Ukraine. I have family in Ukraine, I have family in Russia, and I'm against Putin. I'm against what he's doing. I'm against him taking the territories that do not belong to him.
Most of the world seems to stand in solidarity with Ukraine. There's no end in sight yet. However, according to recent polls, Europeans and Americans share the goal of Ukraine victory, even if this means prolonging the war.
A year of bombardment by Russian artillery has had a severely destructive impact on Ukrainian sport and its competitors. Many saw their training facilities blown up. Some athletes went to the front to fight alongside their compatriots, and some were forced to flee the country. Others used their success to support the Ukrainian cause.
Я знаю, що багато хлопців на передовій дивилися поєдинок, мені присилали відео, і я відсилав їм. Я знаю, що багато хлопців вболівали. То єдина, то наша спільна перемога, то я думаю, що дуже хлопців так підбадьорило, взагалі людей.
Other athletes have had to take the difficult decision to move abroad to carry on training and competing. One of them is Victoria Kachuk, a 400-meter hurdler who, along with others, went to the United States.
It's really nice that every country, it's not almost, it's every country try to support us, try to write to some message, to support for training camp, for ask what we can do for your family, and it's really nice to we are so far from Ukraine, but everyone tried to support, and we are not alone here.
Ukrainian athletes represent a country at war, attacked by another nation accustomed to capitalizing on the success of its athletes. Ukrainians are aware that they're fighting for more than just medals.
A regional politician from Russia's Samara region has made headlines after he shared a video of himself listening to a State of the Nation speech by President Putin while hanging noodles over his ears. Mikhail Abdalkin, a deputy for the pro-Kremlin Communist Party, posted the video on several platforms, writing fully support great performance. The action may have been in reference to a Russian proverb of having noodles hung on one's ears, meaning being lied to.
Every 2 minutes, at least one woman dies due to complications during pregnancy or childbirth. A new UN agency's report has analysed data from 2016 to 2020. The study found that the maternal mortality rate in sub-Saharan Africa is more than double the global average. And in Europe and North America, maternal deaths increased by 17% over the same period. But that figure is relatively low, according to the World Health Organization scientist Jenny Creswell.
It's important to remember that in terms of the absolute burden, it's not so much within the European region. And many of these kind of relative increases, they're relatively small. They're small in absolute terms because the overall level of mortality is low.
However, several European countries have seen the number of deaths rise into double digits. And while reduced access to medical services during the coronavirus pandemic may have been a factor, it doesn't fully account for the rise.
I would say that we think that COVID-19 contributed, but it does not explain the stagnation, because these stagnations we've been talking about, they do predate 2020 by several years.
Most deaths, experts emphasise, can be prevented. Progress is threatened by the underfunding of primary healthcare systems, lack of trained health workers and weak supply chains for medical supplies. The goal is to reduce the maternal mortality rate to less than 70 by 2030.